count 1 to 5. Okay. So this is the first option in, or the first kind of loop in programming. The second loop is we don't know how many times we want to run the loop, right? The number of times is not known, right? For example, if this secret number program that we just did, we don't know how many trials it will take the user to guess the right number. He can enter it correctly from the first attempt. He can enter it correctly after 2, after 3, after 100 attempts. We don't know, right? You understand that, guys? Okay, right. So these are the different types of loops in programming in general, right? We are going to start with the first one because it's simpler, right? And then we will go to the second type of loops, right? So the purpose of loops is to repeat statements several times. And we do it in two ways, either by knowing beforehand how many times we want to repeat this code, or we don't know how many times we want to repeat this code. Right? So let's start with the first one. The first type of loop is done using a statement in programming called the for statement. Okay? Let's look at how this for statement is used, and we'll use it in an example to make everything clear for you. So I'm going to actually can share my screen, and let's do a very simple question of displaying hi for 5 times. Okay, I want to display a message box saying hi for 5 times. Okay, so here I know how many times I want to display hi, 5 times. So this is a for loop. This is a for loop without hesitation, right? So in order for us to count, we need a counter to keep track of the number of times we have paused. So whenever we are going to use the for loop, we need to create a counter to keep track of how many times the code is executed. Okay. So whenever the question requires you to use a for loop, without hesitation, you are going to create a variable to control the for loop, right? So let's see how we can do this in VBA. So I'm going to record a macro. I will call it display hi 5 times. Okay, right? Okay, and then stop. Then I'm going to go to my Visual Basic and start entering my code. Right? So always when you are here, we are going to use the for loop. So the first step is to create a variable as a counter for the loop. So the first thing is I'm going to create a counter. I can call it anything. I will call it counter, integer. Okay, usually it's an integer. Right? And then I'm going to write my for statement. This is how we write for statement in VBA. So for counter. Okay. This is the name of the variable we just created. Okay, so for counter, this is the name of the variable I created in here. For counter equals. Okay, where we are starting from, we are starting from the number 1 to the number 5. Okay, and then step 1. Step 1 means if you are taking stairs in any building, you can take it 1 stair at a time, or 2 stairs, or 3 stairs, depending on how tall you are, right? So step 1 means how we are going to take this number, how this counter is going to work. Is it going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or will it jump 1, 3, 5, and so on? So the step specifies your step size. Okay? I'll show that to you an example. Okay, and then inside the for loop, we are going to display the message box saying hi. Okay. Right, and then to close the for loop, we insert next. Okay, next closes the for loop. It's like end if in the if statement. Next is an end for the for loop, right? So again, the structure of the for loop starts with the letter 4, the word for, and then the variable we created at the top, and then equals 1 to 5, 1 where we are starting at, to 5, this is our end. And then the step is, if you are counting 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 or whatever, and then the statements that we want to execute, and then next the end. Now, if I run this code, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? If I want to do it 3 times only, I can either make the counter 1 to 3, step 1, like this. So now, by changing the 2 value, it will be executed only 3 times. Okay. Or I can leave it at 5 and change this step to step 2 and run. It will be displayed only for 3 times. So this is the basic for structure. We have a variable to control the loop, and then we use the for variable name equals where we are starting from, to where we are ending at, and then our step. Right? And that's it. Right. So let's get you guys to do a simple practice, very simple practice, and then we'll take it from there. Right. So what I want you to do is we're going to do a program that counts from 3 to 7. Counts from 3 to 7 message boxes. So you are going to display message box saying 3, and then a message box saying 4, and then a message box saying 5 until we reach 7, right? Using for loop. Right? So let's try and do this, right? And see if you can do it on your own, and then we'll do it together. This is this should be simple. We want to display the values from 3 to 7, like that. What to do here is display whatever is in the counter value. So message box counter. The counter variable contains this is a little bit hard to do it together because I want to show you how the for loop actually works, right? So I'm going to start by recording this macro. So I will call it count numbers, for example, right? And okay, and stop recording. Right? So if I go to Visual Basic now, there is an easy way that we can do based on what we learned so far. All I need to do is write message boxes. So message box 1, 3, and then message box 4, and so on and so forth, right, until 7. But this doesn't make sense simply because I can tell you I want to count from 1 to 1 million. Are you going to write 1 million statements? That's so doesn't make any sense, right? So instead of having to retype or write the same statement for millions of times, we replace them with the loop, right? So the loop replaces these statements. So instead of doing that, I will create my variable, so dim counter or index, whatever you want to call it, as integer, right? And then I will jump into my for loop. So for counter equals 3 to 7, and we want to display all numbers. So I will use step 1, okay? And then I'm going to display whatever value is inside the counter. Okay? And then next, right? So 2 things. When you use variable names, we don't need double quotations. Double quotations are only used when we have explicit text. Otherwise, we don't need any double quotations, right? And I want to show that to you in action, and then I will show that to you how it works, right? So I will run 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Perfect. Now let me show you how this works step by step, so you understand how the for loop works, right? So let's see. Right. So the first thing is, let me add this as okay. Right. So this is my variable name. My variable name is called counter, as you can see here. And when we start, it starts with the value of 0, right? When the variable starts in VB, it starts with the value of 0, right? Now, when we enter the 4 statements, the counter variable takes the values in the loop. So the counter will start at 3 and move all the way to 7. So when I click here, F8, now you can see that the counter took the first number in the for loop, which is 3. If I press and 3 is displayed, right? And when I click next, when the execution reach next, counter is updated to 4. So now counter is equal to 4. 4 is displayed, and so on and so forth, right? So the counter variable changes with every loop. Every loop, it takes one more number, it increases, right? If we do the same thing, but change the step here, so I will do a 3 to 7, step 2, instead of step 1, and we'll do it one more time and observe the difference. So now, if you look here, we start at 3 as well, right? And 3 is displayed, but now, in the second time, the counter takes the value 5. It adds 2 to the 3, not 1, right? So now it's 5, and 5 is displayed, and now 7 is displayed, okay? So this counter is not just a dummy variable. You can use the value in the counter. You can use it and do lots of things with it, right? You guys understand now how the loops work, how the for loop work? I hope so. Right. Let's do another example, and then we will get you to practice a little bit more sophisticated example, okay? And then we will move one step ahead, right? So let's do this nice example. Right. Let's create a macro to add numbers 3 to 7, to add odd numbers from 3 to 9 using the for. Okay. So here I want this number to automatically add the numbers 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8, 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 9, and at the very end displays the result of this addition process. Right? So again, we do this together. Okay, so we want to add odd numbers from 3 to 9 using the for loop. First step, what variables do we need in this case? Right? First step is always what data we will use, and therefore what variables will we need. We are using the for loop, so we need a counter variable for the for loop. So this is one variable. The second variable we will need is the variable that will hold the output of the summation. So the summation needs to go somewhere, right? So I need a variable to hold the sum of the data, right? So I need to create two variables. One is the counter for the for loop, and another variable to hold my data, the outcome of the summation, right? So now we know our variables. Let's record a macro. We'll call this macro add numbers. Okay, stop recording. Go to my Visual Basic, and let's create these two variables. So the first one is dim counter as integer. Okay, right, and then I'm going to create another variable. I will add a comment here, create a variable to hold the sum. Okay, and then I will dim sum as integer. Okay, so I created a variable to hold the summation of the numbers. Right. When I start the program, what value should sum have? When I haven't added anything yet, what value should sum have? I haven't added anything yet. There's nothing in there yet. So what value should I put in sum? 0, right? I haven't added anything. So we start with sum equal to 0. So I will set initiate sum. Right? I will say that sum equals 0 because I'm only starting. So there is nothing in my summation yet. My sum is 0. And now I start my loop. So for counter equal 3 to 9. Now it says odd numbers. Odd numbers mean 3, 5, 7, and 9. So it is 2 steps, not 1 step only, right? To 9. So step 2. Right? And how do I calculate the sum? The summation is going to equal to counter plus the old value of the summation, right? So I'm starting with sum equal to 0. I add 3 to it, it becomes a 3. Then I add 5, it becomes 8. And then I add 7, it becomes 15, and so on, right? And then next. And at the very end, when I'm done with this loop, I'm going to display sum. Right. So this is for sum is a confusing statement. Sum equals counter plus sum. So I'm adding sum to itself. It doesn't make sense, right? I will show that to you in action as well, so you can visualize it. Okay. So if I run this code first, let's run it and see the result is 24, which is okay. Makes sense, right? Let's track this and see how it works. So I have counter. I am going to add another variable, which is sum. Okay. And I want you to watch the values of sum and counter as I execute this line by line. So, okay. So I'm starting with sum is equal to 0. Perfect. This counter. And add it one more time. Okay. So we are starting with counter equal 3 and sum is equal to 0. We already set sum equal to 0, and now I have counter is equal to 3. The new sum now becomes counter plus sum, which is 3. Okay, right? So now counter is equal to 3 and sum is equal to 3. When I press F8, now counter, the new value of counter is 5. It becomes added to the old sum, right? And now the sum is equal to 8, and so on and so forth. So each time sum is updated based on the previous values of sum and counter. Okay. Right. Right. So here there is a common mistake that I see all the time, guys. There is a common mistake I see all the time. Some of you will insert the message box inside the for loop. So instead of putting the message box after the next, by mistake, you're going to put it inside the for loop. And this is what's going to happen. 3, 8, 15, 24, right? You only insert the statements you want repeated inside the for loop. If there is a statement you want to be executed only once, it has to go outside the loop after the next, right? So this is one of the most common mistakes that I see, right? You need to make sure that if there is a statement you want to be executed once, you have to put it outside the for loop. Questions, anyone? Perfect. So now I want you to try to do the same question, but instead of addition, we want to do it multiply. So multiply for numbers from 3 to 7 using for loop. Okay. So I want you to do the very similar thing, but this time we are going to multiply the numbers. So see if you can do it, and if you get an error, let me know. Right? It's very similar with one small difference or two small differences. Okay. When you get an error, let me know so I can help. Say if I did Any question? For a minute, and we will do it together. All right, so let's go and do this together. Right. As always, I'm going to create a macro called multiply numbers. Okay, stop recording. Right, and I will leave this one visible so you will see that they are very similar to each other. So I still create two variables. So dim counters. Let me as integers, and then I will create instead of the sum, I will create product and integer as well. Okay, and then I will initiate product. So product equals. In the previous example, we initiated sum to 0, right? Because this is addition. When you are adding numbers, if you add any number to 0, you get the same number. But in multiplication, if you multiply any number by 0, you get a 0. So you need to initiate to 1, not 0, which is the identity of multiplication, right? So instead of initiating to 0 in the summation, initiate to 1 in the in multiplication, right? And then we do our for loop, very similar to what we did before. For counters equals 3 to 7, step 2. And then product will be equal to the old product multiplied by the counter. And then next, and after we are done with the multiplication, we display a message box of the product. And that's everything. So let's see the result. 105. Okay. Any questions so far? Right. So this is the easiest kind of loops that we will use, which is the whole loop. We just tell VBA how many times you want to repeat this, and it runs for us, right? The second type of loop is we don't know how many times we want to repeat some statement. In this case, how do we know when to exit the loop? When do we exit the loop? We don't know how many times, right? So we need to find another way to know when we are going to finish executing the statement. So this other type of loop called conditional loop means that instead of having a counter, we have a condition that controls the loop. So we will repeat doing the same work until something happens. Okay? I'm going to keep running until I get to the library. I'm going to keep writing and keep studying until I understand everything, right? So we have a condition, right? And similar to if functions, they are very logical when you are saying that. Okay? These loops are called do until, right? So you are going to do something until you reach your destination, until your condition is met, right? So let's see how this is done, right? So let's do a very simple example just to demonstrate the syntax, how to write this loop. So if I do an example, right, to write a program that will keep asking users for to enter value, to enter a value, to enter a string or text until she enters stop. Okay. So we'll do this very simple program, a program that will keep asking the user to enter a value until this user writes the word stop, and then this will end the program, right? Okay. So let's see how this is done, right? So I'm going to record a macro. We'll call it until stop, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. Okay. And let's see how we can write this code. Right. The first thing is we need one variable, right? The variable we need is the value entered by the user, the string that will be entered by the user. So I'm going to create a variable, yes, okay, as string. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to check if the guess entered by the user is stop or not. So I will start by asking the user to enter the value, right? So this will be equal to, please enter your word, or so sorry, input box. Please enter your word. Okay, right. And then I want to keep asking her to keep entering the guess until she gets it right. So this is how I will do it. Do until guess is equal to stop, right? So keep entering the guess until the user enters stop. What will I do? I'm going to keep asking. Again, I will ask one more time. So guess is equal to, I can actually repeat, I can copy and paste the same statement. So I will copy the statement here and paste it inside the loop. Okay. And then to close the loop, we write the word loop. Okay. Right? Right? So it's that simple. You write do until, and then what is the condition that will stop the loop? What is our purpose? What is our criteria to stop executing the statement? And then we enter the statement we want to execute and the word loop, right? And I run. I enter any word. It will keep asking me to enter until I enter the word stop, and it will. Okay. Fine. Now there is something that is very important when it comes to do until loop. Okay, now I'm speaking slowly though, so this you should feel there is danger here. Right. So the danger here is this is the worst, most dangerous structure we will use in programming. Why? Before I tell you why, we need to save our work. Okay. So when, as a rule of thumb, whenever you are going to use the do until loop, save your work first. Okay. So I'm going to save my file, and then I will show you the big problem here. It's Excel macro enabled, of course. Okay, and I will save my file. Okay. Now, please don't follow along in this step. So this is a mistake I will make on purpose and show you what happens if I do this mistake. Right. So what happens if you forget this statement? If I forget guess equals input box, the statement inside the do until loop, if I delete this, I want you to see what's going to happen now. Okay. I won't save my work now, but let's run it and see. I will run it from my, okay, done. Please enter your word. I will enter something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, doesn't matter, and then press OK. And Excel hangs. Excel stops working altogether. Why? You can see it's hanging. If I do that, it hangs forever. Why did it hang? Because now the guess is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the value, the guess is, and the value I'm checking against is stop. They will never match. They never match. There is only one value entered, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there is never a match between the guess and stop. Never. And this is why the loop keeps going and going and going forever. It's called an infinite loop, a loop that goes on forever. And the only solution to get rid of this is by closing Excel. So if you do it on the exam and you make this error and you did not save your work, bye-bye your work. You have to repeat everything again, right? So this is why I'm telling you, with this kind of loops, you need to be very, 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 very careful, right? So you need, when you have a question in the assignment or in the exam that asks you to use the do until loop, you have to make sure you save your work before starting. Right? So as a rule of thumb, whenever you are using the do until loop, you need to make sure that there is a statement to change the value of the condition, right? Here I'm taking the value guess. So you always need to make sure there is a statement inside your function that will change the value of the condition controlling the loop. Right. Let's apply this to the secret number example, and I will close with this. Let's apply the same idea with the secret number example. If we go and look at the secret number example, right, we are using the if function to check for once, and that's it. We are going to keep asking the user to enter the secret password until he gets it right, or she gets it right. Okay. So I'm going to, I will call it a macro. I will call it secret number 2. Okay, and stop recording. And then I will go to my Visual Basic. Okay. Fine. So the two functions are very similar. So secret number 1 and 2 are very similar. I'm going to copy part of secret number 1. So I will still need the guess and secret, and I will set the secret to whatever value. And I will start by asking the user to enter the first guess. Okay, so I copied all of these things, and I will paste it in my new program. Right? So I want to create a guess for the user to guess the secret number, which I'm going to store inside my program. And I am setting my secret number to some value and asking the user to guess the number. Right? We did this exactly the same in the first program. Nice. Now, instead of using an if here, we're going to use a do until. So we are going to keep asking the user until the guess matches the secret. Okay. So do until guess is equal to secret. Okay. Equal to. Right. So what are we going to do here? We're going to check if the guess is greater than secret. So if guess is greater than secret, then we're going to display a message box saying too big. Else, we're going to display a message box saying too small. And then we need to end if here. Okay. Now I have a question for you guys. In the original secret, I had if, else, if, and then else. I had 3 options in the if. Here I have 2 only. Why do I have 2 options only in this if? Why am I not checking if there is a match between the secret and the guess? Understand the question? In the previous example, in the secret number, here, I am checking if the guess is equal to secret, and then checking if it's greater than the secret, and then if it is less than the secret. Here, I'm only checking for one thing. Why? Let me answer this. The answer is because the third condition is already in the do until. The do until already have the third condition. It's the do until guess equal to secret, right? So I took care of this condition already. So I need to focus on the other 2 conditions. Right? So once I complete the if function, then I will loop, right? And I'm going to display a message box saying you guessed you are correct. You are correct, right? Because the user will only exit the loop if he guesses the correct guess. He will keep inside the loop until he guesses it right. If he never guesses it right, then it's not going to ever exit the loop. Don't run the code yet, please. Don't run the code. Right? First, we need to save. And the second thing is there is an error in this code. I want someone to tell me what is the error in this code. This code will lead to infinite loop. It will cause our Excel to crash if I try to run it like this. What is wrong here? Yes, right. So the wrong here is I did not change the value of the guess inside the loop. I only take the input once outside the loop. And if the user enters the incorrect secret number, the loop will continue forever. So inside the loop, I need to make sure I ask the user to enter the guess again. Now let me save my work. Save. Right? And run it. Okay. If I enter it correctly from the first time, you are correct. If I enter a few errors, 2, too small, 3, too small, 9, too big, 6, too small, and 7. Now it's more like it did. The do until loop is a little bit more complex than the for, so we'll be spending next week working with while do until loops for a long time. The exam will cover only until the for loop, so the while loop is not on the exam. We are done here, guys. I'm going to save the last 15 minutes to work on the group project, or if you have questions about the group or individual projects, and I can help you. Otherwise, if you are done, you are free to go. And thank you so much for coming today. Save this file because we'll be using it next week.